What are some good ways to gift to family members? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Elliot Apple, founder and financial planner of Kindness Financial Planning, and today we're talking all about gifting. First, let's talk about some gifting rules so you can understand before we get into the finer details how best to do it. So for each person, they're allowed to give what's called an annual gift tax exclusion amount. And for 2023, it's $17,000. Estimates for 2024, these aren't official yet, are $18,000. So what this means is each person can give any other person that they want up to $17,000 in 2023. So for every person who watched this video, I could give them $17,000. I could give family members $17,000. I could give friends $17,000. I can give anybody I want $17,000, and I don't have to worry about filing a gift tax return. I don't have to worry about a federal lifetime exemption amount. I can just give it and it's fine. So if you were to give $20,000, $17,000 would go against the gift tax exclusion amount, and then $3,000 would be filed as a gift tax return. Now, everybody has a fairly large lifetime gift and estate tax exemption amount that the $3,000 would go against. So they'd have to file a gift tax return for that, but assuming that exemption amount is not fully used, they're not actually owing any money. They just need to file a gift tax return for it. So the annual gift tax exclusion amount is really important to understand because as long as you're under it, you don't really have to do much else. But if you're over it, you do need to file a gift tax return, which requires a little extra effort. Most people aren't going to actually owe any tax at that point, but it is going to eat into that lifetime gift and estate tax exemption amount on the federal level. And depending on your state's rules, you should look into that as well. So let's now get into how you can actually make these gifts. The first one is giving cash. This is probably the easiest one. You know exactly what $17,000 is. You could transfer that via a bank account, via cash, I suppose, if you really wanted to, or a check. There are a lot of different ways to transfer that into someone else's name, and it's the easiest to track. But keep in mind that it's the total value of all gifts in a year. So if you're going to give $17,000 to an individual, you couldn't necessarily then pay for a plane ticket for them or get them extra gifts that equate to some value, right? If you're already up to the full amount in cash, you really can't give them anything else because then you'd be going above it and you have to file a gift tax return. Again, nothing wrong with that. You could do that, but this is where I see some pitfalls where people say, okay, hey, I'm going to gift $17,000, but oh, I paid for them for this vacation or I gifted the money for this. You need to make sure that every gift falls below that $17,000, at least in 2023. You should research this every year and what that amount is to figure out what is the proper amount to give, taking into account anything else that you're going to give them throughout the year. Another way to give money is to give stock. So if you have money in a brokerage account, let's say you bought ABC stock. This is just a fictional example here. ABC stock 10 years ago for $1,000 and it's worth $10,000 today. You could give that stock into a brokerage account in their name. So this would be a really nice way, instead of giving cash and selling it, to be able to realize that capital gain. Instead, your cost basis is just going to move over to their account. So if you paid $1,000 for that stock and you gifted the stock without selling it, the stock landed in their account, their cost basis is still $1,000. If they wanted to then go sell it, they're going to face a capital gain on that appreciation. So this is a way to potentially get money into someone else's name. And this can be really effective if, for example, you're in a really high tax bracket, maybe you're in a larger capital gains bracket, or that will do something else to your tax situation in that year. Maybe you give them stock and they're in a situation where they can recognize that capital gain if they need the cash. And that's a better trade-off. Maybe there's less tax overall. So this is one method to do that. Still, same rules apply with the annual gift tax exclusion amount and everything else, but sometimes people are in a lower capital gains tax bracket, potentially even 0%. I have videos on that, where that gifting stock can be a really effective way of giving. Another really excellent way to give is via a 529 plan or a college savings plan, particularly for younger folks. I find this often comes up with grandchildren where they want to make a large lump sum deposit into a 529 plan for their grandkids. And what's really neat about this method is you can super fund a 529 plan and give up to 5 years worth of your annual gift tax exclusion amount. You do need to file a tax return to elect to split those gifts over the 5 years, and there's special rules about how much then you can contribute into future years, which too many details to go into for this overview of this video, but just know that there are some special rules going forward. But it is a good way to get a very, very large lump sum. So you could say, hey, $17,000 is the annual gift tax exclusion amount. Times that by 5, that's the total amount that I could give this year. If it increases in future years, you can do that multiplier of the 5 years, and then just make sure you're filing a gift tax return to account for that. But it's a really good way to get funding into a 529 plan at a young age, get those tax-free earnings as well as withdrawals for qualified educational expenses in the future. The last way that is technically a gift is to be able to pay for medical and educational expenses directly. And what's really cool about this way of giving is you can give more than the annual gift tax exclusion amount, assuming certain rules are met. So for example, let's say you had a family member who suffered some really huge medical debt and they had to pay the hospital a really large sum of money and it was above the annual gift tax exclusion amount. Let's say they racked up $50,000 worth of medical debt and you could pay this off directly to the hospital. And if you do that, if you pay the hospital directly or the medical provider, you don't need to worry about filing a gift tax return if you pay them directly. Or for example, if they're in school and you pay the university directly, let's say a year's worth of tuition is $50,000, it is above the annual gift tax exclusion amount for 2023, you wouldn't actually need to file a gift tax return if it's paid directly. Now I say directly because that's the key here. You can't pay this to the person to then have them pay. You actually have to pay the university or the hospital or the medical provider directly to be able to gift in this manner. And then the last way is more of a bonus way. It's not technically a gift if done properly, but you could create a loan. And why I kind of include this in the gift sort of realm here is that the interest rates that you use for creating this loan can be much lower than what you go out and find in regular markets, like if you were to go to a bank or somewhere else to obtain this loan. So what you can do is you can look at the applicable federal rate or AFR rates and see there's short-term, midterm, and long-term rates that you can use for different loan terms. And so you need to look those up to understand, hey, what is a short-term loan? How many years is that? What is the rate? These change monthly. And by doing this, let's say you wanted to lend someone money for not necessarily a mortgage, but to buy a house, but you don't want to gift it outright. You could technically create a loan, use a long-term AFR rate or a shorter-term loan, depending on how you want to structure this. And let's say a long-term AFR rate is 4.5%. I'm just throwing that out there. You'll need to check what they actually are when you're watching this video. But let's say regular 30-year mortgages are 7%. Well, that could probably feel like a real gift to the person if they're going to be paying 4.5% versus 7%. Now, you'll need to document this and do all the proper procedures to actually make this a legitimate loan. But if you follow all the rules correctly, this could be a good way to not gift money, but to have something feel like a gift for someone because you're offering lower interest. They'll pay lower interest over the life of the loan. You'll potentially earn some interest as well, and it's not an outright gift. But I do include it in the gift section just because I find this can be a helpful way for people who want to help someone but want to offer them a lower rate than they could get via traditional financing channels. There are many different ways to gift to people, whether that's cash, stock, 529 plan, paying medical providers directly, and even potentially creating loans, although not technically a gift if done properly. It ultimately depends on what works best for your family and what your financial situation is, but these are a few of the options. I have an article as well on my website, kindnessfp.com, if you want to read into the details a little bit further. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful, and please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Take care.